The Christian community had 5 marks to it. And that Christian community's 5 marks were category defying, and they still are. What are they? Here's the 5. It was the most multi-ethnic, multiracial community the world had ever seen. It was the first community that said we have to not only care for our own poor, but for everybody else's. They were highly generous and committed to caring for the poor. Number 3, they were non-retaliatory. In a shame and honor culture where vengeance was everything, is you did this to me, I'll do it back to you. In a shame and honor culture, Christians, if you came and attacked them, they'd never attack you. If you burned their houses down, they'd never burn your house down. They'd forgive you. Number 4, the early Christians were against both abortion and infanticide. Now, in those days, as you might guess, abortion did happen, but of course it was far more dangerous, and so instead, infanticide happened, which was much more common, which meant if you had a child that you didn't want to have, you threw the child out after the child was born. You put it on the garbage, out in the garbage, and the child either died there or people came along and raised them and made them slaves. And Christians said that was wrong, and the Christians, put their, you might say, put their money where their mouth is, and went out and actually found the children, brought them in and raised them and saved them. Put another way, the first Christians were pro-life, but in a very comprehensive way. And that is, basically they taught there are no gradations of human life, of human value. There's no gradations of human value. That women are not below men, and children are not below adults. All human life is precious and valuable and in the image of God. And number 5, so it was most multi-ethnic, caring for the poor, non-retaliatory, forgiving, against abortion and infanticide, and it was a sexual counterculture. It brought about the first sexual revolution. Well, what is that first sexual revolution? Sexual practice and the vision of sexuality in the Roman world was sex was an appetite. It was for self-gratification. And in that Roman world, it was understood that men, in particular, even if they were married, could have sex with anyone who they wanted to, and they did. It was expected that they would. Anyone they wanted to. Men, women, boys, girls, and anyone who was of a higher social status could force sex on anyone of a lower social status. And that was the way sex was done in the Roman Empire. Christians came along, and it was the very, very, very first sexual revolution. Because what Christians said was, we are against porneia, and the word comes up all the time in the New Testament. It's usually translated sexual morality, but it had a very specific meaning, and it meant sex was only for inside marriage between a man and a woman. You know why that's so radical? Christians were saying sex is not for self-gratification, it's only for self-giving, and not just emotional self-giving. You can only have sex with someone to whom you've given your entire life. And the sex is a way of giving them an entire life, where it's like a sacrament. It's a visible way of talking about the invisible reality. It's a way of putting yourself in the arms of someone that you've given yourself to. Multi-ethnic, interracial, right? Caring for the poor, justice for the poor, non-retaliatory, filled with forgiveness, building bridges, loving your enemy. Number 4, pro-life. Number 5, sexual counterculture. Okay. Have you noticed something? The first 2 sure sound like the Liberal Party. And the last 2 sure sound like the Conservative Party. But the middle one doesn't sound like any party. And here's what I want you to see. You realize how category defying it is for it to be a church that would be marked by all those things? And guess what? There's going to be huge pressure to break the Christian social project apart and reduce it to a particular blue or red, an extension of a blue or red political agenda. If you do that, you will lose the uniqueness. You will lose the ability to have a true missionary encounter with our culture.